Maya hadn't felt the ground under her feet without fear in 2 years. At 16, she moved like glass, careful, guarded, always braced. Her mother, Dr. Celine Hart, a billionaire medical genius, had flown in the world's best surgeons, yet Maya still couldn't walk. Then one rainy afternoon, a grease-stained single dad named Ethan stepped forward, and everything changed. Celine Hart didn't believe in maybe. She believed in data, elite credentials, and results that could be measured. That's why the moment Ethan, an ordinary mechanic with oil on his sleeves, suggested he might help Maya walk again, Celine's face tightened like a locked door. "We've spent millions," she said sharply, voice cold enough to freeze the air. "My daughter isn't a weekend experiment." The workshop fell silent. Even the buzzing tools seemed to pause. Maya stood there with her brace strapped tight, cheeks flushed with embarrassment. Not because she was hurt, but because she was used to being treated like a problem that needed fixing. She could feel everyone's eyes, like they were silently agreeing with her mother. Ethan was nothing, just a man with dirty hands and no medical degree. Ethan didn't argue. He didn't raise his voice. He just glanced down at Maya's brace, then at her shoulders, the way they stiffened, the way her body prepared for pain before she even moved. "You've been trained to fear your own leg," he said gently. "That fear is louder than the injury." Celine scoffed. "You're a mechanic." Ethan nodded, almost amused. "And you're a doctor, but pain doesn't care who has a title." Maya looked at him then, really looked, and saw something she hadn't seen in any hospital room. Understanding. Not pity. Not the forced optimism of therapists who smiled too hard. Ethan's eyes carried the weight of someone who had lived through physical loss. Someone who knew what it meant to have your body betray you. His limp gave it away. He didn't walk like a man who had always been strong. He walked like someone who had rebuilt himself one painful step at a time. Celine's assistant whispered, "Ma'am, we should go." But Maya's voice cut through, small but steady. "Mom, please." Celine froze. The billionaire doctor who controlled rooms with a glance suddenly looked unsure. She wanted to say no. She wanted to protect her daughter from disappointment. But she also saw the exhaustion in Maya's eyes, the kind that no medication could soothe. Ethan stepped back respectfully, giving Celine the power to decide. "No pressure," he said. "Just 1 minute. If it hurts, we stop." Celine inhaled sharply, like she was swallowing her pride. Then she gave one stiff nod. "Fine," she said. 1 minute. Maya's heart pounded as Ethan knelt beside her brace, adjusting it with careful hands. Not like a mechanic rushing a job, but like a man handling something sacred. Ethan didn't pull out machines or medical charts. He didn't ask Maya to sign waivers or promise miracles. Instead, he guided her toward a clear space in the workshop where the concrete floor was worn smooth by years of footsteps and rolling tires. "This isn't about forcing your leg," he told her softly. "It's about teaching your body that it's safe again." Celine stood a few feet away, arms crossed, her expensive heels looking out of place on oily ground. Her eyes were sharp, skeptical, but underneath that was fear. Not fear of Ethan failing. Fear of believing again. Maya's hands tightened around her brace straps as Ethan crouched beside her. He checked the alignment of the brace like he'd done it 1,000 times, then tapped the metal lightly. "This is holding you up," he said, "but it's also keeping you from trusting yourself." Maya swallowed hard. "Every time I try, it feels like my leg disappears." Her voice cracked, "Like it isn't mine." Ethan nodded like he understood perfectly. "That's because you stopped listening to it. Pain taught you to shut it out." Then he did something surprising. He didn't tell her to walk. He told her to stand still. "Close your eyes," he said. Celine immediately stepped forward. "Absolutely not." But Maya obeyed before her mother could finish. She closed her eyes and took a shaky breath. "Now," Ethan continued, "don't think about moving. Think about weight. Let it shift slowly, just enough to feel your heel." Maya's breathing became loud in her ears. The workshop noise blurred. All she could feel was a tremble in her leg and the sting of fear crawling up her spine. Ethan stayed close, not touching her, but ready. "You're not broken," he said. "You're scared. And that's different. Celine watched, her jaw clenched so tightly it looked painful. She'd seen Maya endure surgeries, robotic therapy, nerve tests, injections that cost more than most people's homes. But she had never seen her daughter face the most terrifying part healing, trusting her own body. Maya's foot twitched. Her brace creaked softly. Her knee threatened to buckle, and she gasped. Instantly, Celine moved again, reaching out. But Ethan lifted one hand, stopping her without even looking. "Don't save her," he said calmly. "Let her find herself." Maya's eyes stayed closed. Tears slipped down her cheeks, silent and hot. "I can't," she whispered. Ethan leaned closer. "You can? Because you're still here, and the leg is still here. It's waiting for you." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, barely noticeable, Maya's heel pressed down harder. Not dragged, not forced, pressed. Her foot met the ground with intention. Maya's whole body stiffened in shock. Her eyes flew open. I felt it. Celine's breath caught like she'd been punched. Her billionaire certainty cracked for the first time. Because what she just witnessed wasn't technology. It wasn't money. It was a girl reclaiming herself. Celine tried to keep her expression controlled, but her eyes betrayed her. They filled with the kind of tears she had never allowed herself to shed. Not in operating rooms, not in board meetings, not even when doctors quietly admitted they had reached the limit of what medicine could do. She had always believed the solution was somewhere inside a lab, hidden behind a door marked Elite. Yet here, in a noisy workshop smelling of oil and steel, her daughter had felt something real, because a single dad with no title treated her fear like it mattered. Maya stared at her foot, as if it were a stranger she had just reunited with. "I felt my heel," she whispered again, like repeating it would make it stay true. Her hands trembled, her lips shaking as hope fought against years of disappointment. Ethan didn't celebrate. He didn't smile like he'd won. He only nodded, calm and steady. "That's the first conversation your body has had in a long time," he said. "Now we keep talking to it." Celine cleared her throat, forcing her voice to sound firm. "This doesn't mean anything yet." But even she didn't believe her own words. Ethan looked up at her, and for the first time, Celine felt something uncomfortable being seen. Not as Dr. Celine Hart, the billionaire physician everyone feared and admired, but as a mother terrified of failing her child. Ethan didn't mock her. He didn't challenge her authority. He simply said, "I know you've done everything you could, but sometimes everything isn't the right thing." That sentence hit Celine like a slap, because it was true. She had drowned Maya in treatments, surrounded her with machines, guarded her from discomfort, guarded her from the world. But she couldn't guard her from the one thing Maya needed most, the courage to try again. Ethan stepped away and handed Maya a rag to wipe the sweat from her palms. "We stop here," he said. 1 minute turned into progress. "That's enough for today." Maya blinked rapidly. "Wait, so you're not going to make me do more?" Ethan shook his head. Healing doesn't respond to force. It responds to trust. Celine's assistant leaned in, whispering sharply, "Ma'am, we have a private rehab appointment in 30 minutes. Celine didn't answer. She was staring at Ethan like he was a puzzle she didn't want to admit she couldn't solve. Then, quietly, Maya spoke. "Mom, can we come back?" Celine looked down at her daughter, at her fragile hope, at her trembling strength, and something inside her finally cracked open. Her pride battled her love for only a second. Love won. Celine turned to Ethan. "How much?" she asked, already reaching for her phone. "Name your price." Ethan's answer stunned her. Celine's fingers froze midair, her phone still unlocked, her billionaire instincts still searching for the quickest way to buy certainty. "Permission?" she repeated, as if the word offended her. Ethan wiped his hands on a cloth and stood slowly, his limp visible now that Celine was truly watching. "Yeah," he said. "Permission to let her struggle, to let her fall sometimes, to stop treating her pain like a business emergency." The workshop felt smaller, tighter, like the walls leaned in to listen. Celine's pride flared. "You think I don't know what pain is?" she snapped. "I've watched my daughter suffer for 2 years." Ethan didn't flinch. He just held her gaze. "You've watched her suffer," he said gently. But have you ever let her fight? Maya's eyes filled instantly. That question hit her, too. She had spent years being carried by nurses, by machines, by her mother's money, by fear. She had survived, but she hadn't lived. Celine opened her mouth, ready to defend herself, but the words got stuck. For the first time in her life, she couldn't out-argue the truth. She looked at Maya, at her daughter's small shoulders stiff with tension, at the way her hands clung to the brace like it was the only thing holding her identity together. Celine suddenly realized something devastating. Maya didn't just fear walking. She feared disappointing her mother. Ethan gestured toward a corner of the workshop where an old balance bar had been welded from scrap metal. "Come back tomorrow," he said. "No cameras. No doctors. No pressure. Just time." Celine's assistant immediately protested. "Ma'am, this is ridiculous. Your schedule." Celine raised a hand to silence her. The assistant stopped, stunned. People didn't silence Celine Hart's staff, but Celine didn't care. Maya took a slow breath. "I want to," she said, voice trembling but certain. Celine nodded, and something in her expression softened. The sharpness replaced with something raw and human. "Okay," she whispered. "We'll come." The next day they returned, and the day after that. Soon, Ethan became a strange new part of their lives. Between oil changes and phone calls from CEOs, he would guide Maya through tiny movements. He taught her to feel the ground, to shift her weight, to breathe through fear instead of running from it. He counted seconds, not steps, because he knew the mind needed victories before the body could follow. Celine tried to stay distant at first, watching from behind crossed arms. But each time Maya trembled and didn't quit. Celine felt something she hadn't felt in years. Humility. She started bringing coffee. She started sitting instead of standing. She started listening instead of commanding. Then one afternoon, everything shifted. A group of wealthy clients entered the workshop looking for Ethan. One of them recognized Celine instantly. "Dr. Hart?" The man gasped, loud enough for everyone to hear. "What are you doing here?" He glanced at Ethan with disgust. "You're trusting him with your daughter?" The man laughed. The others joined. They called Ethan a grease monkey. They called him unqualified. They called Maya a pity case. And that was when Ethan finally stopped being quiet.